I had just finished showering and was drying off when my phone rang. I wrapped a towel around myself and hurried into the bedroom to answer it. Darlene had already gone to do her Christmas shopping, and we were scheduled to meet later at the psychologist's office. I had just finished showering and was drying off when the phone rang. I wrapped a towel around myself and hurried into the bedroom to answer it. Darlene had already gone to do her Christmas shopping, and we were supposed to meet later at the psychologist's office. Before I could say hello, a cheerful male voice rang out, "Hi, Darlene. Do we have a chance to meet today and have sex?" I asked, somewhat agitated. "What the hell are you talking about?" There was a sigh, then 2 or 3 seconds of complete silence, and then the click of the disconnector. I looked at the phone, taken aback. I was startled to hear a male voice say, "Hi, Darlene. Is it possible to meet today and engage in sexual activity?" I inquired, somewhat agitated. "What are you referring to?" After a brief period of silence, I looked at the phone. I realized it was Darlene's phone, not mine. They were the same model, but mine had a crack in the glass of the screen, and the one I was holding did not have it. She must have picked up the wrong phone when she came to the door. I wondered who could have called her and informed her about it. After a brief moment, I realized that the phone in my possession was not mine, but rather Darlene's. While both phones were the same model, mine exhibited a crack in the screen glass, while the one I was holding was intact. It appeared that she had inadvertently taken the wrong phone when she arrived at the door. However, I was perplexed as to who would have had the opportunity to inform her of this discrepancy. My God, did she truly have an extramarital affair? I found myself in a state of disbelief. I proceeded to the bathroom to dry myself, and as my thoughts raced, I couldn't help but reflect on the unexpected turn of events. Darlene and I have been married for 6 years, have no children, and have been in agreement regarding our marital life for the past few months. I was taken aback by the revelation that Darlene was engaging in extramarital affairs. Despite the challenges we've faced in the last few months, including a decline in our physical intimacy, I still felt a strong sense of connection to her. I invited her to explore new opportunities, and she expressed her interest in maintaining a regular physical relationship. However, her interest in making love has noticeably decreased. I invite you to join my channel and express your thoughts. It would be greatly appreciated if you could subscribe and share your thoughts. This would be a valuable opportunity for us to discuss the challenges we've faced and explore potential solutions. In the past, we engaged in physical intimacy 2 or 3 times a week, but it has gradually decreased to 1 or 2 times a month. This decline has been particularly noticeable since she has become more passive and unenthusiastic in her physical interactions with me. This shift in her behavior is a concern, as she no longer resembles the passionate and enthusiastic partner she was at the beginning of our marriage. We have engaged in numerous discussions about this issue, and Darlene has repeatedly stated that she is unsure of the reason for this change in her behavior. Despite her insistence that there was nothing out of the ordinary, that she was simply overwhelmed with work, she offered no concrete evidence to substantiate her claims. There had been no significant projects, demanding deadlines, or professional advancements. However, when I inquired further, Darlene asserted that she felt more at ease and on occasion, our intimate life together resumed. Nonetheless, this pattern persisted, and the situation continued to evolve. Despite my inquiries, Darlene maintained that there was nothing out of the ordinary. She stated that she was simply exhausted and preoccupied with work commitments. However, there had been no significant changes in her professional life, such as major projects, pressing deadlines, or career advancements. Each time I broached the subject, Darlene expressed feelings of improvement. Occasionally, we engaged in intimate activities that same evening. However, the situation eventually returned to its original state. By the end of September, I had grown weary of the pattern. That evening after dinner, I seated Darlene on the couch and directly addressed the issue. "Darlene, I love you, but I'm not ready to continue this way. I don't want to spend the rest of my life without you. You used to enjoy making love to me, but now it's clear that if we do not change our approach, I will be forced to request a divorce." She looked at me, clearly taken aback. "Divorce? Darlene, I'm begging you, this is too extreme. You know how serious this is." I decided to investigate, and I learned that we had 3 brief relationships in the last 3 months, and we had slept together once. That brings the total to 4 times since the beginning of the year. July, and in that time you've turned me down 18 times. I'm not going to live like this anymore. She looked down at her feet, clearly uncomfortable, and looked at me wearily. I continued, first of all I want you to go to Dr. Evans and get a full checkup to make sure there are no physical problems, and secondly, in July you turned me down on 18 occasions. I am unwilling to continue living this way. She looked down at her feet, clearly uncomfortable. She looked at me wearily, and I continued. First, I want you to go to Dr. Evans and get a full checkup to make sure there are no physical problems. Second, I want us to start seeing a marriage counselor. We didn't do anything wrong. No, they did. Are you listening to me, Darlene? We practically lived together as brother and sister. Whether you want to admit it or not, something went wrong, and we'll either try to fix it or I'll leave. There was a significant disagreement, during which Darlene expressed her emotions. I maintained my position and ultimately prevailed. Darlene consulted with Dr. Evans, who confirmed her good health. We began attending Archer once a week, a recommendation of our friends Brad and Allison, who had worked with her previously. We consulted for approximately 2 months, during which time we explored various options. The sessions appeared to be productive, although I found some of the discussions to be unproductive or inappropriate. Eileen maintained that we were making progress, despite the fact that our intimate life had not improved. We discussed a wide range of topics, including our relationship, each other's work, our families, and the qualities of our parents' marriages. The conversation was productive, although it focused more on relationship dynamics and our respective routines than on intimate activities. Eileen's approach was to encourage patience and honesty in our communication. However, my current observation, standing in the bedroom and glancing at Darlene's phone, suggests that I might have uncovered a more fundamental issue. I was pondering the reasons behind Darlene's apparent disinterest in intimate relations with me. Could it be that she has found an alternative source of fulfillment? Or has someone else assumed the role of a traditional husband? From my perspective, there had been no discernible changes in Darlene's routine. She continued to work late, did not go on unannounced shopping trips or social outings, and did not appear to be involved in any significant relationships. I inquired about the reason for Darlene's change in sleeping arrangements. Could it be that she no longer wanted to sleep with me? Was it truly as simple as that? I examined her schedule and noted that it remained unaltered. She did not stay late at work, nor did she go on shopping trips or dates. She did not come home disheveled or flushed, and she did not immediately go to the shower. However, this does not imply that she was not engaging in sexual relations. She was simply exercising caution. I checked the received calls on the phone and discovered that there was only one call. The caller was identified as CM. I pressed reply and waited. To my surprise, the individual didn't pick up the phone, and the call went to voicemail. The message was from Chris Mason saying, "Leave a message and I'll call you back. Have a nice day." I hung up the phone. I recognized the name. He was another employee of the brokerage firm where Darlene worked, I pressed reply and waited for the signal. To my surprise, the individual did not pick up the phone, and the call went to voicemail. The voicemail message was from Chris Mason saying, "Leave a message and I'll call you back. Have a nice day." I hung up the phone. I recognized the name. He was another employee of the brokerage firm where Darlene worked, but in a different department. She had mentioned him a couple of times, but I've never met him. I examined Darlene's phone carefully. Not only were all of her previous received calls deleted, but also the lists of missed and sent calls. Who could have taken the time to delete all this? Darlene was obviously covering her tracks. I proceeded to the office and reviewed the mobile and home phone bills from the previous few months. Darlene was listed as the payer for these bills, so I did not feel compelled to search for them. I located all the home phone bills on the desk, but the search yielded no record of calls from Chris Mason, either from his mobile phone or from any other source. I reviewed the office and home phone bills from the previous months. Darlene was responsible for the payments, so I did not feel compelled to search for them. I located all the home phone bills in the desk, but there were no records of mobile phone calls from Chris Mason over the last 8 months. I also reviewed the checkbook, and all the mobile phone bills had been paid. It was likely that Darlene had hidden or thrown away the receipts, probably because they listed calls to Chris Mason. I arrived at Eileen's office about 20 minutes early, But Darlene's car was not there. I arrived at Eileen's office about 20 minutes ahead of schedule. Darlene's car was not in the parking lot, so I sat down and considered the possibility that Darlene may have been unfaithful to me with Chris Mason or another individual. If this were the case, our marriage would be over. While Darlene may have feelings for me, her infidelity would render our marriage meaningless. I can't help but wonder if she would have chosen to end our relationship if she had not been in love with Chris Mason. Why would she want to remain in a relationship if she was not committed to me? Why would she choose to see a counselor? However, it appears that she may be withholding information from both the counselor and me. If she believes she could conceal the truth, she will soon discover that this was a misjudgment. Initially, I planned to meet with Darlene at Eileen's office today to discuss the contents of Chris's call and request an explanation. However, I realized that this would not be necessary. I had intended to inform Darlene about the details of Chris's call and request an explanation at Eileen's office today. However, I realized that this would not be sufficient. I required evidence to substantiate my claims. I wanted to take action that would effectively terminate our marriage by addressing Darlene's actions. I was upset and hurt, and she requested compensation for the harm she had caused me. I had a more suitable location for our final interaction than Eileen's office. I proceeded there, and after some time, Darlene arrived and kissed me. I required more evidence. I wanted to terminate our marriage by striking Darlene in the nose. I was angry and hurt, and she requested to pay for her actions. I selected a more suitable location for our final confrontation than Eileen's office. After a while, Darlene appeared and kissed me. We proceeded to a meeting. Eileen initiated a discussion about the typical subjects regarding how we address our parents in our relationship, and whether the discrepancy in our styles is based on our parental experiences, how our parents argued, and so on. I engaged with her, appeared thoughtful and serious, and attempted to provide plausible responses. I maintained composure, though I was tempted to respond more strongly towards the end of the session. Eileen allowed me to tease her slightly, saying, "I know it's challenging for both of you, but we are." I was able to maintain composure, although I was tempted to respond in a less than civil manner. Towards the conclusion of the session, Eileen offered me an opportunity to tease her, albeit in a restrained manner. She stated, "I understand it's challenging for both of you, but we are beginning to explore the intricacies of your marriage, your expectations from it, and the importance of honesty in fostering a productive discussion about your challenges." I intervened to express my gratitude for her feedback. I acknowledged the difficulty I faced, but I strive to be fully transparent. I would like to discuss the importance of honesty and openness in our communication. It appears that this approach is essential for achieving our goals. Darlene, would you agree? I observed a slight blush and averted her gaze. She nodded in agreement with Eileen and stated, "I concur, Alan. I share a similar perspective." I speculated if Eileen had noticed Darlene's evident discomfort. It appears that this is the only method of achieving our objective. Darlene, would you concur? I observed her blush slightly and avert her gaze. Instead, she looked at Eileen, nodded, and stated, "I concur, Alan. I share the same sentiment." I pondered whether Eileen had noticed Darlene's evident discomfort. She refrained from commenting on it, but it appeared to me that she stared at Darlene for a moment or two. Following the session, we proceeded to a diner across the street for a swift lunch. When she departed for the ladies' room, I swiftly retrieved her mobile phone from her purse and discreetly placed it in my pocket. Then, I ventured outside to purchase a newspaper from a vending machine. While there, I powered down Darlene's phone, wrapped it in newspaper, and placed it at the bottom of the trash can. I anticipated that Chris Mason would be eager to contact Darlene to share the events that had transpired, and I wanted to ensure that he did not have an opportunity to reach her. I retrieved the newspaper from the vending machine and proceeded to turn off Darlene's phone. I then wrapped it in the newspaper and placed it at the bottom of the trash can. I anticipated that Chris Mason would be eager to contact Darlene to inform her of the incident, and I wanted to ensure that he did not have the opportunity to do so during lunch. Darlene and I engaged in minimal conversation, predominantly regarding her shopping and the necessary gifts for the following day's Christmas dinner at her parents' residence. We compiled a list of essentials and subsequently visited a series of bustling shops to purchase the remaining items. I was astounded by my capacity to maintain my composure and feign ignorance. During the lunch meeting, Darlene and I discussed her recent shopping spree and the necessary items for the following day's Christmas dinner at her parents' residence. We then proceeded to a selection of shops to purchase the remaining items on our list. I was astounded by my ability to maintain composure and act cordially, despite my inclination to physically retaliate. During the dinner, the telephone rang 3 times. Each time, I immediately rose to answer it, anticipating a call from home. However, on the third ring, the call was silent. I was tempted to respond aggressively, but I refrained. About 20 minutes later, a female voice, unfamiliar to me, inquired about speaking with Darlene. I speculated that Chris, perhaps in a moment of desperation, had requested that a friend pass along a message to Darlene. The voice responded, "Iris from work." Smiling to myself, I inquired, "What's the matter?" About 20 minutes later, a female voice, which I did not recognize, inquired, "May I speak with Darlene, please?" I speculated that Chris, perhaps in a moment of desperation, had requested that a colleague pass along a message to Darlene. The voice responded, "Iris from work." Smiling to myself, I inquired, "What's the matter?" There was a brief pause and then she stated, "Oh, there's an account that we're both working on and I have a few questions about it." On Christmas Eve, I said, "I'm afraid she can't come to the phone right now, but I'll leave you a message. Have a nice evening." I ended the call with Darlene looked at me blankly when I returned and said, "Some woman is conducting a survey. Imagine she calls on Christmas Eve." It was obvious that she was a little worried. She waited for a few minutes, then casually went into another room, no doubt to check her cell phone. She came back with her. Darlene looked at me blankly when I returned and I said, "A woman is conducting a survey. Imagine she calls on Christmas Eve." It was clear that Darlene was slightly anxious. She waited for a few minutes, then casually went into another room, no doubt to check her cell phone. She returned with her purse and looked worried. "Darlene, do you know where my mobile phone might be?" I asked. "I remember taking it from the dresser when I left this morning." "God, Darlene, I have no idea. Is it not in your wallet? Did you look outside the car? Or maybe you left it somewhere at the mall." She searched the car but to no avail. I sat and smiled. In the end, she gave up and I promised to give her a new one for the new year. "Don't count on it, dear," I thought to myself. I suspected her next step would be to try to call Chris if she could get rid of me for even a few minutes. Several times during the evening, I noticed Darlene watching me. Out of the corner of my eye, I suspected that she was hoping to get to the phone. Finally, she said, "Honey, I'm a little tired. I'm going upstairs and watch TV." "Of course, Doreen," I replied. "Sounds great. I'll just put the dishes in the sink, and we'll go together." She smiled at me, but I could see that I considered the possibility that she was eager to use the phone. She stated, "Honey, I'm slightly fatigued. I'm going upstairs to watch TV if that's all right." "Of course, Doreen. That sounds perfect. I'll just put the dishes in the sink, and we can go together." She smiled at me, but I could see that she was upset. An hour later, she asked me to check if there were any bins on the side of the road. When I reminded her that tomorrow was Christmas and there would be no garbage collection, she turned away with obvious disappointment. When we went to bed, she didn't have time to call anyone on Christmas morning. I rose early, had breakfast while Darlene slept, and made some preparations. Then I went into the bedroom and gently woke her up. "Good morning, dear. Merry Christmas," I said, giving her a fake smile. "There is coffee in the kitchen. I'm off. I'll see you at your parents' later." She sat down awkwardly. "It's only 8:30. Alan, where are you going?" I smiled again. "I need to pick up a last-minute gift for you, but don't worry. I'll see you there at 2. She protested. "Aren't all the shops closed today? Can't I come home and pick her up later?" However, I was already on my way to the door to kiss her at 8:45 a.m. I knocked on Chris Mason's door. Finding his address in Darlene's office book, I expected him to be in town today, as he mentioned that he was looking forward to meeting Darlene the next day. When he opened the door, he was wearing a bathrobe and looked sleepy. A tall, good-looking man. I entered Chris Mason's residence and located him in his living room. I presented him with the Hurley 2008C, a pistol I had previously used for short-range training. He appeared visibly startled. "Mason, I have come to discuss a matter regarding Darlene." He declined to elaborate, and I proceeded to introduce myself as Chris. The man, who appeared to be around 25 years old, fell silent and retreated to his living room. I proceeded into the room and closed the door behind me. I pointed the Hurley 2008C pistol directly at his chest. It wasn't a lethal weapon. I used it for short-range training. However, Mason seemed unaware of this fact. My name is Alan Rutan, Darlene's husband and your current partner. His eyes widened and he took another step back. Hey, calm down, okay? I don't know what you are anyway. Chris, you called yesterday and asked me to spend the night with you. Do you really think that I don't see what's going on? That's what's going to happen? We'll sit here in your living room and have a nice chat. If I don't receive the necessary information, I will use force to get it. After a while, we will visit people I know and talk to them, and then I will leave you to live your life. Do you understand? He looked at me wearily and nodded his head slightly. All I have to do is talk to you. I nodded yes, and I'll leave you. If I don't receive the necessary information, I will be forced to take action. This could include physical violence. After a period of time, we will visit individuals I know and talk to them. Then I will leave you to live your life. Do you understand? He looked at me wearily and nodded his head slightly. All I have to do is talk to you. I nodded yes, and I'll leave you alone. It's unfortunate to be shot at, isn't it? Chris and I talked for a while, and he told me everything I wanted to know. Then I watched as he took his clothes and took them to the bathroom to take a shower and get dressed. After that, he made us sandwiches in his kitchen, and we ate with me holding him at gunpoint the whole time. We didn't talk much, and that was good for me at 10. At 10:45 we proceeded to the car, where I provided Chris with the address and instructed him to drive, ensuring he sat in the back with a firearm. Upon arriving at Darlene's parents' residence, I directed Chris to park 4 doors away to avoid being seen by them. I observed that Darlene's car was already present, along with her sister Barbara's and her husband's vehicle. However, I wanted to make a memorable entrance, so we sat and waited until 12. I then proceeded to exit the vehicle and escort Chris to the entrance. I emphasized that further games would not be tolerated. Chris, do you recall our agreement? I will make some introductory remarks, you will share your story, and I will depart. You will retain custody of your testicles. I will have a firearm in my possession. I then removed Chris from the vehicle and escorted him to the entrance. There would be no further games. Do you comprehend, Chris? I inquired. We will enter, I will make some introductory comments, you will share your narrative, and I will depart. You will retain custody of your testicles. I will have a firearm in my pocket, but it will be immediately drawn if you attempt to take action. He appeared to be somewhere between awkward and terrified. Do not worry, man. I will act as you described when we rang the doorbell. Darlene's mother, Sarah, answered the door. Her friendly smile turned to confusion when she saw Chris. He looked between awkward and terrified. Hello, Alan. Who is this? Hello, Sarah. It's me, Chris. Merry Christmas. I kissed her on the cheek as we entered the foyer. This is Chris. He's only here for a few minutes. Ignoring her confusion, I took Chris by the hand and led him straight into the dining room, where the family was about to start eating. Obviously, they were going to start without me. Merry Christmas to everyone, I said with a happy smile, looking around at their surprised faces. Darlene's father, Tom, her sister, Barbara, her husband, Mark, and their 2 boys, Teddy and Ben, were here. Darlene was sitting a little further back. The other attendees appeared satisfied, though Darlene's countenance suggested a deeper level of surprise. She appeared as pale as a ghost, her mouth opened slightly, and I feared she might faint. This is Chris, a colleague of Darlene. He has a story to share. Please, Chris. Darlene has already risen to her feet. No, I insist. It's not necessary. Darlene, I believe it would be beneficial for all present to hear this narrative. She took a few steps toward the door, but I gently grasped her arm and embraced her. Chris, Darlene attempted to disengage from my embrace, saying, No, Chris, please. I placed my hand over her mouth to silence her while her parents observed, visibly astonished. Chris hesitantly began to speak. Darlene and I engaged in a romantic relationship that commenced in April, and has persisted since that time. Darlene's family inhaled sharply, their gaze shifting from Chris to Darlene and me. After a prolonged pause, Barbara lifted Teddy and Ben from their seats and directed them into the living room. She then activated the television and returned to the residence, closing the door behind her. Please continue. Chris, I smiled. We met at work. There are a couple of massage rooms in the gym with closed doors. We do this about twice a week, meeting at different times so as to not attract attention. We work on different floors of the building so no one noticed that we were leaving at the same time. There are showers where we clean ourselves up. Darlene continued to struggle with me. She tried to bite my hand but I held her tight. Chris, I said, please be specific. What exactly were you two doing together? He didn't meet my gaze. Well, we made love. Sometimes, Darlene. It was a positive experience for both of us from the start, and Darlene expressed her enjoyment. I found the expression of horror on her mother's face to be intriguing. Darlene ceased resisting, and I withdrew my hand from her mouth. She remained standing, tears streaming down her face. What was it like to sleep with Darlene? I inquired politely. I was aware of the response I would receive. I allowed him to practice several times to ensure his comfort. Darlene is very attractive, always proactive, and she tightens her hips. She even winked at me, especially during orgasm, which I was surprised by. Darlene's relatives remained unresponsive, as I had anticipated. I inquired politely. I was aware of the response I was likely to receive. I allowed him to practice several times to ensure he was comfortable. She is very attractive, always proactive, and engages in pelvic thrusting. She even winked at me, especially during orgasm, which I hadn't anticipated. I asked if any of Darlene's relatives had attempted to dissuade her. Did she ever discuss me with anyone? I inquired about her feelings regarding me. She informed me that she loves me, but she continues to engage in intimate relations with me. The only male organ she requires is yours, she informed me on numerous occasions. When were you planning to meet again tomorrow? He stated that she needed to work in the office. We had planned to spend approximately 3 hours together. We hoped that we would have more time this time. How long do you think this affair will last? He estimated a few more weeks. I would have liked to continue, but Darlene indicated that it was time to stop. She stated that you insisted on Darlene has decided to seek professional counseling due to concerns regarding her intimate life and the potential repercussions for her personal relationships. She mentioned that the New Year's Eve incident would likely mark the end of our relationship, but then she lightened the mood by suggesting it might take a few weeks to reach that point. The atmosphere in the room was subdued. Darlene's family observed the unfolding events with evident surprise. Darlene, Chris, and everyone present were visibly affected, with Darlene sobbing and concealing her face with her hands, not offering any verbal comments. I approached Tom, took his hand, and offered a respectful farewell. Tom, I deeply appreciate the opportunity to be your son. In light of recent events, it is important to acknowledge the feelings involved. You and Sarah are good people, and deserved better than this unfaithful daughter. As a husband, naturally I deserved better than her. I went up to Sarah, kissed her on the cheek and said, "Goodbye, Sarah. I'm sorry I can't stay for lunch. It might be a little awkward." Darlene fell to the floor still crying. I approached Darlene, who was still seated with her face in her hands. "Darlene, please do not return home today. Your belongings will be collected near the garage in the morning, and the locks will be changed. I ask that you do not attempt to communicate with me. You have no information to share." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Ellen, dear," she said. I turned to the table, smiled, and headed for the door, waving to everyone. Chris was smart enough not to ask me for a ride home.